My sister had an affair with my husband and became pregnant, all at the same time. I confronted him, served him with divorce papers, and revealed his intention to leave us and flee to Thailand with his new partner. Hey everyone, I've noticed some great advice being shared here, so I thought I'd give it a shot. Brace yourselves, because this story is quite a ride. For some context, I'm a 30-year-old woman, and I've been married to Matt, 33, for nearly 6 years. I run my own business selling handmade soaps and candles, a venture I built from the ground up with a lot of passion and hard work. My life was pretty wonderful until about 2 months ago when everything fell apart. I discovered Matt was having an affair with my younger sister, Grace. Yes, you read that right. I'll get into the details soon, but it left me utterly shattered, and that was just the beginning. A bit of background. I'm the eldest of 3 siblings, with Grace, 20, being the youngest. She was a surprise to all of us, born nearly 10 years after me. From the moment I saw her, I was head over heels. I had always wanted a sister, and her arrival brought me so much joy. I quickly became like a second mother to her. I took care of her, fed her, bathed her, and even spent my pocket money on toys and clothes for her. She was the sweetest baby, and I got my dad to buy me a digital camera just so I could take pictures of her and make scrapbooks. My love for her was boundless, and I did everything in my power to ensure her happiness. As we grew older, I started earning my own money and would spoil her with toys, books, and clothes. I picked her up from school every day, and our weekends were spent binge-watching Gilmore Girls, eating ice cream and popcorn, and visiting bookstores. Those moments were some of the best of my life. Grace and I shared a bond that felt unbreakable. Things started to shift when I moved out for college. It was in a different state, and although I made an effort to visit home during breaks, I often felt like I was missing out on a significant part of Grace's childhood. I missed everyone, especially her. College was a new adventure for me, filled with freedom I had never experienced before. I indulged in the typical college life, attending frat parties with my friends. That's where I met Matt, the DJ at one of the parties. I was instantly drawn to him. He had tattoos, shoulder-length hair, and an undeniable charm. We clicked right away, and the night was unforgettable. After exchanging numbers, I discovered he was also a student at my college, a couple of years older than me. We started texting and meeting up frequently. I was head over heels. He was funny, intelligent, and a great conversationalist, not to mention incredibly attractive. He had his quirks, a bit stubborn and sometimes obnoxious, but I was so infatuated that I didn't notice. Looking back, I wonder why I was so captivated by him when he was only doing the bare minimum. But then I realized when you're young and in love, you tend to overlook these flaws, only for them to resurface later. Anyway, we went on a few dates, and before I knew it, we were a couple, and everything seemed perfect. After Matt graduated, we decided to move in together. We found a small apartment close to my campus, making it convenient for me to attend classes. Matt started as an intern at a tech company while I worked part-time at a bistro on campus. We didn't have much money and bills were tight, but our happiness made up for it. I felt like a true adult for the first time. Matt was incredibly supportive. He'd make me breakfast, help with my studies, and even pull all-nighters with me before exams, despite having to work the next day. I couldn't believe I had found such a perfect partner. He made me feel loved and valued in ways none of my previous boyfriends had. When we went out, he introduced me proudly as the love of his life. At his work parties, he would introduce me to his colleagues, often talking about me so much that I felt a bit overwhelmed. He seemed genuinely devoted to me. Matt met my family for the first time during my graduation weekend. They had heard about him over the phone but had never met him in person until then. By this time, we were in a serious relationship, even sharing a bank account. My family adored him. My dad, who was notoriously hard to please and had never approved of any of my previous boyfriends, was won over by Matt. Although my parents were initially upset that I had moved in with Matt without consulting them, their concerns melted away once they saw how well he treated me. I was ecstatic to see Grace, who was almost 13 at the time. It was her first visit to me at college, and she enjoyed talking to my friends and professors. She seemed to have a little crush on Matt, as she got shy and fidgety whenever he was around. By the end of the weekend, Matt had charmed my entire family, and I was relieved. I truly loved him and hoped our relationship would last forever. After graduating, I started working as a personal assistant at the same company where Matt was employed. This arrangement was perfect for us as we got to see each other frequently. About a year later, after 4 years of dating, Matt proposed, and it was everything I had dreamed of. The proposal was beautifully planned, and I was overjoyed when I said yes. When we returned home, I was stunned to find our closest friends, my parents and siblings, there to celebrate our engagement. Matt had even decorated our apartment. I later learned that he had flown my family down specifically for the occasion. I truly felt like I had found my soulmate. We got married less than a year later, and the wedding was magical. Grace was my maid of honor, and we had saved enough money to move into a bigger apartment and even got a cat together. As the years went by, I felt incredibly blessed to have such an amazing husband. He took wonderful care of me and made me feel like a princess. My career was thriving, and Matt had also been promoted. We started talking about starting a family. However, things were not as good with Grace. She underwent a drastic change after the sudden and tragic death of her best friend, who was like a sister to her. Grace was inconsolable. I rushed home to help, but she was a complete mess. After the incident, she became withdrawn, stopped eating, and refused to speak. We gave her space and time to grieve, hoping she would start to heal. But as months passed, her condition didn't improve, and I became increasingly worried. She was only 15 and was dealing with such profound grief. Grace stopped attending school and began failing most of her classes. I wanted to get her into therapy, but my parents insisted she needed more time and space to grieve. She started talking more and leaving her room, but it was clear she was still depressed. The vibrant, lively Grace I once knew seemed to have disappeared. Her condition worsened, and I began receiving troubling calls from my mom, who told me Grace was hanging out with a rough crowd, older boys who drank and did drugs. She even caught Grace smoking, which was completely out of character for her. When Matt and I visited home for Christmas, things took a turn for the worse. I noticed a stark change in Grace. Her style, speech, and behavior were drastically different. She was rude, disrespectful, and just plain difficult. I tried to talk to her, but she shut me out completely. She told me I could never understand her pain and demanded to be left alone. When I brought up her behavior, an argument erupted. She denied being crazy and refused therapy. The exchange was heated, and only Matt was able to calm her down. Finally, she said she was going to a friend's house to relax. She didn't come home that evening, and by nightfall, I was starting to panic. I was about to start calling all of Grace's friends when her boyfriend, a 20-year-old who was dating a 16-year-old, called us to say that Grace had overdosed on pills. My heart sank. We rushed her to the hospital, where they were able to resuscitate her. It turned out Grace had been using drugs to numb the pain since her friend's death. We vowed to do everything we could to prevent another incident and got her into therapy. The ordeal was devastating, but I was relieved she was finally getting help. Barely a few months later, I received another call saying she had overdosed again. She miraculously survived, but this time we had to place her in rehab. She stayed there for several months to get clean, and when she returned, we hoped she could start fresh. It was heartbreaking to see such a bright, young girl wasting her life like this. No matter what we did, she kept reverting to her old habits. It became a vicious cycle, and the more we tried to help, the more she pushed us away. After numerous failed attempts to get her clean, I gave up. It might make me seem like a terrible person, but Grace had pushed me to my limits, and I decided to focus on my own well-being. During this time, Matt was my rock. He acted as the mediator between Grace and me, often calming situations down. He listened to me, helped me find ways to support Grace, and was incredibly patient throughout the entire ordeal. I decided to refocus on my work, and we began trying for a baby. After a year of effort, we still had no luck, and I was diagnosed with PCOS, which made natural conception challenging but not impossible. Initially, we remained hopeful, but as time passed, I grew increasingly depressed. The frustration of not becoming a mother despite our efforts began to take a toll on me. My work suffered, and my performance declined until I eventually quit because I just couldn't handle it. I felt like I had failed as a woman to fulfill what I saw as my most fundamental purpose, motherhood. I could see Matt was struggling too, but he never blamed me or pressured me into anything I didn't want to do. I tried finding other jobs, but nothing worked out. That's when I decided to create something of my own. I had always loved making handmade soaps, and given my struggle with acne, I had started making my own soaps years ago, gaining a good understanding of the ingredients. I began making and selling my soaps to neighbors and friends, and they loved them. Soon, they were ordering from me monthly. With the help of a friend who set up a website, I started selling nationwide. When one of my friend's daughters posted about my soaps on TikTok, my business took off, and for the first time in months, I started making a profit. I began to feel like myself again. I shifted my focus from trying to get pregnant to embracing my role as an entrepreneur. It seemed like things were looking up for us. Matt appeared happier, and he had been promoted, taking frequent business trips. Everything seemed to be going well until about 2 months ago. Matt was away on one of his trips, and I was feeling lonely, so I decided to visit my parents and try to mend things with Grace. When I arrived, they told me Grace had moved out and was staying with a friend. I decided to surprise her with a visit and went to the address they gave me. What I found was the last thing I'd ever expected. Matt opened the door. He was half-dressed, and Grace was right behind him, both looking horrified. I was utterly confused and in shock, and their guilty expressions confirmed my worst fears. They claimed he was just visiting her and that he was working nearby, but I didn't believe a word they said. I felt completely blindsided. My mind couldn't grasp the reality of the situation. The last thing I ever expected was for Matt to cheat on me, especially with my little sister. The worst part was yet to come. In my state of shock, I didn't even notice that Grace was pregnant, about 4 to 5 months along. I was so disgusted that I threw up and nearly fainted. The situation escalated to the point where neighbors called an ambulance, and I was taken to the emergency room. The whole time I was paralyzed with shock, almost in a trance, as if nothing anyone said mattered anymore. But it got even worse. At the emergency room, after running a series of tests, I received an even bigger shock. I was pregnant, about 2 months along. I couldn't believe it. Looking back, the whole situation is so absurd that it's almost laughable. I had spent years trying to get pregnant with no luck, and the day I found out that my husband of almost 6 years had been cheating on me with my baby sister and had gotten her pregnant, I discovered I was pregnant too. It felt like some kind of cruel joke, but unfortunately, it wasn't. My parents arrived and nearly fainted when I told them what had happened. Matt and Grace finally showed up, and instead of offering an explanation, Matt approached me and said he no longer loved me. He claimed he loved Grace and was planning to marry her. I threw up again. Grace revealed that she and Matt had been together for over a year and that he had been planning to divorce me but couldn't find the right moment to tell me. Matt accused me of being emotionally unavailable and unable to meet his needs for years, which led him to seek comfort in Grace's arms. He said it started as a friendship that quickly turned into something more. Grace admitted that she knew their relationship was wrong, but after Matt promised to divorce me, she chose to go ahead with it, hoping to give him the one thing he always wanted, a baby. I couldn't believe it. Matt had always seemed so supportive and loyal. He never gave me any indication that he was unhappy in our marriage until a few days ago when I dropped him off at the airport. He kissed me and told me he loved me just like he always did. I had no idea he felt this way. I was completely blindsided. This was the last thing I ever expected. I was overwhelmed and couldn't process everything, but one thing was clear. I wanted nothing more to do with Matt or Grace. My heart was shattered beyond repair. When I told Matt I was pregnant, he was in disbelief but still insisted he wanted to be with Grace. I was disgusted by the entire situation. Matt had known Grace since she was 12, which added a whole new level of creepiness to the betrayal. I decided to stay with my parents for a while, as the doctor had warned that this was a high-risk pregnancy. All I had ever wanted was a baby, but now I was more miserable than ever. With the news of their betrayal, many of my friends and relatives severed ties with Matt and Grace. Utterly disgusted by their actions, they began focusing on the positive aspects, buying toys, clothes, and strollers for the baby. You won't believe it, but Matt and Grace didn't reach out once to apologize. The only time Matt called, he had the audacity to ask me to buy things for his baby with Grace. He complained that the family had isolated them and hadn't given them anything, while they had gone overboard for me. He claimed that he and Grace felt punished and that their baby deserved just as much as mine did. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These people had ruined my life and had the gall to ask me for gifts. It was revolting. Matt completely cut me out of his life. In the following weeks, I attempted many times to contact him to discuss the next steps, but he didn't even respond. My parents told me that Grace had been telling them about a boyfriend who loved her and treated her well. Every time they asked to meet him, she made excuses, completely unaware that it was Matt. I don't know how he did it, but he managed to manipulate my emotionally fragile sister into believing that I was the problem and that he was not at fault. That infuriated me more than anything. Grace's betrayal hurt me far more than Matt's. After about 2 weeks of trying to reach him, I decided to get lawyers involved and file for divorce. Just before I could file for divorce, I received an anonymous email claiming to have crucial information about Matt. Initially, I thought it might be a prank, but my curiosity got the better of me. I replied, expressing interest, and soon received another email with a link to a folder. Inside were photos of phone conversations, bank statements, and various documents about Matt. The email revealed that Matt had lost his job over 2 years ago and had borrowed a significant amount of money from some lenders. He couldn't repay his debts and was now avoiding them, drowning in debt. The documents showed that he had another girlfriend in Thailand who was willing to let him stay with her. Phone conversations indicated that he had been planning this for months. He had secretly bought plane tickets, secured a work permit for Thailand, and was planning to leave next month to evade his debts and start a new life with her. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe Matt was this unhinged, but the evidence was irrefutable. There were conversations with the money lenders where he pleaded for more time, and conversations with his girlfriend where he talked about marrying her. He never mentioned he was already married. The folder included bank transfer statements, plane tickets, and visas. Matt had somehow convinced my sister that he loved her and was going to stay with her, all while planning to abandon us. He couldn't just ruin our lives and escape the consequences. Enough was enough. I printed all the information, sealed it in an envelope, and after consulting with my parents, I finally contacted my lawyers and disclosed everything. After much resistance and numerous excuses, my lawyers were able to reach Matt and arrange a meeting. When we finally met, I was relieved to see that Matt had brought Grace along. As soon as he saw me, he started saying he didn't love me anymore, urging me to get over him and stop leeching off him. I laughed as I handed him the envelope and told him it contained everything he'd ever need. His surprise was palpable, and as he went through the documents, all the color drained from his face. I laid everything out for Grace, revealing how he had been planning to leave her, deceived her, and showed her all the receipts. Matt claimed I was framing him out of jealousy and started making excuses, but the proof was irrefutable, and my lawyers had ensured my protection. I served him the divorce papers, sealing the deal. He looked like he was about to faint. He tried making more fake excuses, denying everything, but when he saw that even Grace wasn't buying his story, he started apologizing, insisting it was all a big misunderstanding. His lawyers were advised to get involved before he made things worse. My lawyers assured me that Matt wouldn't be leaving anytime soon because his work permit was obtained illegally. Yes, it just kept getting worse for him, which was great for me because it meant he had to face the consequences of his actions. The divorce trial is set to start soon, and everything is currently a mess. Matt will be questioned about his illegal visa, and Grace is completely devastated because she fell for his lies. My parents are struggling to handle both of us. Is it wrong to feel a little smug about the whole situation? Does that make me a bad person? Matt had absolutely devastated my life, and now, in a way, I feel like I'm just getting back at him. Everything is in shambles, and nothing is confirmed yet, leaving me feeling incredibly conflicted. I keep wondering if I should have handled this differently. Update 1. Hello, everyone. Wow, it's been a while and I have a lot to share. First, I want to address some comments I've seen under this thread. Matt had known Grace since she was just 12 years old, a literal child. Even though their affair began when she was barely an adult and it is technically legal, that doesn't change the fact that his actions were extremely predatory and disturbing. Grace was like a child to me, and the idea that Matt was even remotely interested in her in that way disgusts me. I've noticed some men in the comments defending Matt, saying that Grace was equally at fault. While I'm not dismissing Grace's responsibility, she has been struggling with her own mental health issues and addictions for a long time. She was in a very vulnerable position. Matt knew this. He also knew that she had admired him for years. He could have cheated on me with anyone, but he targeted Grace because he knew she could be easily manipulated. What I'm trying to say is that both of them have done terrible things, but Matt's actions were truly vile for taking advantage of all of us like this. Many of you have asked for updates on Matt's Thai girlfriend. I won't share too much here for privacy reasons, but I can say that she has been talking to Matt for over 2 years. She had no idea about any of us. Matt lied to her, telling her he was single. He even started sending her money every month, making promises that he would work in Thailand for a while, then marry her and bring her to the US. All of it was a lie, of course. I haven't spoken to her directly, but my lawyers have been in contact with her, and now she knows everything. I haven't spoken to Grace either. The last time I did, she accused me of ruining her life, telling me that if I truly loved her, I should have let this whole thing slide and left Matt alone. I reminded her that Matt didn't love her and was planning to leave her with his baby to raise alone, but she still sees me as the villain. You know what's ironic? I should be the one furious right now, but instead, she's accusing me of everything. I just can't win. I still love her, even after her betrayal, but with the way she's acting, I think it's better if she isn't in my life at all. I know it sounds harsh, but I don't care at this point. As for Matt, since he only possessed an illegal work permit and wasn't actively using it in Thailand, he technically wasn't doing anything illegal. It would only be a legal issue if he were caught using it, so there's not much they can do on that front. Regarding the divorce, his lawyers have tried to paint me in the worst light and even demanded shares from my company. We shut that down quickly. My business is solely in my name and Matt has no claim to it. My lawyers have ensured that I don't owe him anything. He will be required to pay child support once the baby is born. The exact amount has yet to be decided. I will also have full custody of the child. Matt tried to make it seem like he wanted custody, but that backfired because everyone knew about his plans to run away. That's all I know for now. We have a court hearing in a few days, so I'll keep you updated. Update 2. Another quick update. I'm doing okay. I'm 4 months along and still at high risk due to gestational diabetes, but the baby is doing great. I never thought I'd have to navigate pregnancy under these circumstances, but I'm grateful to my parents for their support. Every time I see the ultrasound pictures, I feel so excited to meet my child. I know they won't be born into a perfect family, but I'm going to do my best to be there for them. Grace is probably around 7 months pregnant right now, but that's all I know. I'd appreciate it if you could continue to keep me in your prayers. Update 3. Hey everyone, sorry I've been MIA for so long. This update is long overdue, but first, I have some good news. I had a beautiful baby girl. She was born early and had to spend a few days in the NICU, but she's been discharged now and is thriving. I had to have an emergency C-section, but I'm recovering. It was stressful, but I'm so glad it's over. Some more good news: my divorce was finalized. It was a nasty affair, but I had a team of strong lawyers who made sure all my demands were met. As I mentioned before, Matt tried to paint me in a bad light, accusing me of trapping him with a baby to get child support after he left. But the odds were against him. I got full custody of my daughter. As for Matt, we aren't civil with each other. He tried his best to get his child support reduced but failed. He also has to pay back all the money he borrowed. I don't know how he's going to manage that, but that's not my problem. The last I heard, he was trying to get a job. He hasn't met his daughter and didn't even show up for the birth. Honestly, I dodged a bullet. My daughter doesn't deserve a terrible man like that in her life. Grace also gave birth to a little girl a couple of months before I did. I haven't met either of them, and I don't think I will anytime soon. My parents are the only link between us, and they try to help us reconcile. Deep down, she is still my baby sister whom I love and adore, but her betrayal and her actions after have left a deep scar. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm trying to piece together my life bit by bit. I know it's going to take a long time to get back to normal, but I have to try for my daughter. So I'm going to focus on my business and my child from now on. Also, a word of caution to you Matt lovers out there. Matt came across as someone who truly loved me. Nobody who knew us would have believed that he would cheat on me. He publicly declared his love for me and treated me so well, yet he still cheated on me and had been doing so for years with no indication that anything was wrong. All I'm saying is, choose your partner wisely and be careful, because if things seem too good to be true, they probably aren't. Take care.